RMT is currently re-balloting members on London Underground in a dispute over jobs, pensions and agreements. It's absolutely imperative that you vote yes to both questions for strike action and action short of strike action. Vote yes and get your ballot paper back in the post. Management are telling you not to take part in this ballot. That's a disgraceful position for a governmental organisation. The Mayor and his senior managers are telling you not to take part in the democratic process set out in law for an industrial dispute. We're asking you very much to take part in that process, to vote yes and to make sure that we continue to have pressure on TfL and the government in our dispute. We took strike action on the 1st and 3rd of March, which set them back on their heels. Instead of the Barber report then reporting on exactly how they want to hit your pension and how they're going to do it over what timescale, they simply said that it was going to be very difficult to impose these changes. And of course it'll be difficult. That's because we're going to make it difficult and we're going to fight against it. But make no mistake, management have not taken the pensioner tax off the table. They're under consideration. And they include all sorts of ways of increasing your contributions and reducing the amount of money that you get at the end of it. The Barber report outlined 18 different possible ways of changing the pension. And on average, those 18 changes result in about a 30% loss in future accruals as you go forwards. We're just not going to accept that. We don't see why we should pay for the funding gap on London Underground and TfL with our pensions. But it's not just pensions that they're trying to hit us on. They want us to pay for a programme of managed decline of public transport in London, the managed decline of our jobs, our pensions and our terms and conditions. This is because London Underground is expected to be self-financing. This is something that doesn't work anywhere else in the world. No one else expects a system like London Underground to be able to raise all of its operational costs through fare revenue alone. We think there's a much better way of addressing the financial problems that London Underground and TfL are facing. Rather than a programme of managed decline of public transport, we think that the tube should be run as an essential public service and should be funded as such. That's what happens in most other parts of the world, where no one's crazy enough to think that you can run a system like London Underground on the basis of self-funding and covering all operational costs with fares. The fact is that London Underground is an invaluable public service to London. When we went on strike on the 1st and 3rd of March, we were told that that cost £50 million a day in lost value to the London economy. So if you turn that calculation around, what that means is every time we go to work, we create £50 million a day in added value. That's £18 billion a year. So to cover a deficit in costs of £2 billion out of that £18 billion seems like pretty good economics to me. The reality is that there's plenty of people in London who are making an absolute fortune at the moment. Just four banks are about to pay out record bonuses, exceeding even the level of bonuses that was paid before the financial crisis in 2008. Those 4 banks are going to pay their highest earning traders and executives £4 billion in bonuses. I think that £2 billion of that should be used to cover the funding gap. I think that's a much better use of £2 billion than giving it to people who, in all honesty, don't really need it. We're not going to accept this. We're not just going to sit back while members are picked off. London Underground station members will be taking strike action on Monday the 6th of June. This is because stations at the moment are in the eye of the storm. 600 job cuts. That's up to 40% of CSA coverage gone at locations like King's Cross and Heathrow. But this remains a dispute that affects all of us. The pensioner tax remain on the table. They're under consideration. The changes to agreements will come. London Underground have told us that they're looking for the cuts right across the board in every function. So we will be taking further action as an all grades union as we go forwards. And that action could well be alongside our brothers and sisters on the national railways. They're facing very similar issues. They're fighting over pay, they're fighting over jobs, they're fighting over agreements. And we may well put on our action coordinated with them. But it's absolutely crucial that you get your ballot papers back for the re-ballot. Without that, we will be hamstrung. We won't be able to put the pressure on London Underground, the Mayor and the government that we need to if we're going to save our terms and conditions. Say no to managed decline. Say no to the decline in jobs, in your terms and conditions and in your pension. Vote yes and support the strike action.